Have you ever just stopped for a moment, maybe while you're commuting or just staring out the window, and really wondered how your own mind actually works?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Right. And I don't mean the vague, poetic, philosophical idea of having a soul or just the concept of thinking.
Mm.
I mean the actual mechanical gears turning inside your head right now as you listen to my voice and process these exact words.
The physical machinery of it.
Exactly. And taking that one giant step further, what might happen if we could somehow build a machine that thinks exactly the same way you do?
Which is a huge question.
It really is.
Yeah.
Welcome to the deep dive. We have got a truly fascinating journey ahead of us today. Our grounding material for this conversation is it's a highly detailed, incredibly insightful 5-star Amazon review.
And it's an older one, right?
Yeah, written all the way back on December 29th, 2012 by a reviewer named Simon Lobb. He's breaking down Ray Kurzweil's wildly ambitious book, How to Create a Mind.
It's a remarkable piece of source material, honestly, because Loeb manages to distill a notoriously dense, heavily theoretical book into very accessible, practical concepts.
Yeah, he really cuts through the noise.
He does. He gets straight down to the basic architecture of thought itself.
Exactly. And the mission for our deep dive today is to unpack the 3 main themes that Loeb extracts from Kurzweil's work. First, we're going to look at how human pattern recognition actually functions biologically.
Right.
Then we'll explore how Kurzweil believes this biological blueprint translates directly to artificial intelligence. And finally...
Body stuff.
Oh, yeah. Finally, we're wading into the deep waters of the existential implications all of this holds for the future of humanity.
To properly set the stage for all of this,
Yeah.
we need to define one core concept right out of the gate.
Okay, lay it on us.
If you can, imagine a backdrop of intricate star charts behind me.
Okay, picturing it.
These charts represent the vast, beautifully complex networks of information in the universe. In that context, what does Loeb's review say understanding actually is? According to the text, understanding is simply the awareness of connections between individual pieces of data.
The awareness of the connection.
Yes, it's that specific awareness that allows raw, meaningless data to actually be put to use. So in a very real, tangible sense, this entire deep dive we're on today is ultimately about understanding itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. Kurzweil's foundational theory in the first part of his book zeroes in on a specific physical part of the brain, the human neocortex. He argues that human thinking, basically everything that makes you you, is made possible through incredibly simple, fundamental pattern processing units operating within that neocortex.
Just simple units.
Right. It's not magic. It's just biology running a very basic algorithm.
What's fascinating here is the immediate, almost visceral pushback this idea always gets from the scientific community.
I bet.
Yeah, the reviewer rightfully highlights this. Skeptics constantly argue that the human brain is just overwhelmingly complex.
Like too complex to boil down.
Exactly. They claim that Kurzweil's model of simple pattern processing units is just way too simplistic. They say we are absolutely nowhere near understanding or simulating the human brain, and that if you think otherwise, well, you're simply fooling yourself.
It's a very common critique, right? You can't just reduce the majesty of human consciousness to a basic flowchart.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, people hate feeling like they're just biological calculators, but the review pushes back on those skeptics, doesn't it?
It does, very strongly. Loeb calmly defends Kurzweil's approach because, well, it's a crucial defense for any scientific progress.
How so?
He points out that without simple models to test, break, and improve upon, we are left completely paralyzed. Without simplification, we're trapped in what he calls a quagmire of complexity.
A quagmire of complexity. I like that phrase.
You have to start with a unified, simplified cortical algorithm just to be able to move forward. If you just throw your hands up and say, it's too complicated, you never build the foundation.
That makes total sense from an engineering perspective.
Yeah.
And to bring this directly to how you, the listener, experience the world every single day, think about how you actually learn anything new. According to Kurzweil's model, when you learn new patterns, you absolutely have to build upon the patterns you already possess. You simply cannot learn multiple conceptual levels at the exact same time.
It's biologically impossible.
Right. You have to wait until one level of learning becomes relatively stable in your mind, and only then can you go on to learn the next level up.
Right.
It makes me think of trying to learn conversational Spanish while simultaneously trying to master a complex French souffle recipe.
Your brain just jams up.
Exactly. You need the foundation first.
Which brings us to the specific role of the hippocampus. acting essentially as your brain's biological novelty filter.
A novelty filter.
Yeah. The text explains that when sensory information flows through your neocortex, it's up to the neocortex to decide if that experience is actually novel or new to you.
Okay.
If it is novel, like hearing a word in Spanish you've never heard before, the information is then presented to the hippocampus. The hippocampus is then capable of remembering these new situations.
And how does it actually do that?
It stores them by breaking them down into the lower-level patterns that your neocortex had already recognized and stored earlier.
Oh, wow.
It's like a constant hierarchical building process. You don't learn a new word in a vacuum. Your brain maps it onto the sounds and concepts you already know.
That biological mechanical process of filtering and building explains so much about our daily waking lives, but, and this is where it gets really fun, it also pivots perfectly into a universally relatable yet totally bizarre topic. Dreaming. We all dream. But why is it that your waking thoughts follow such strict, logical, rational paths, while your dreams are just completely chaotic? Like jumping from you giving a presentation at work to suddenly flying over a purple ocean with your third-grade math teacher.
It all comes down to the strict rules enforced by what the text calls the old brain, specifically focusing on the amygdala.
Okay, the old brain.
In your normal waking life, every single thought you have naturally triggers other thoughts. It's an endless chain reaction of pattern recognition.
Right.
But sometimes that chain of thoughts starts leading towards something dangerous, illogical, or socially unacceptable. When that happens in waking life, the amygdala immediately steps in.
It shuts it down.
Exactly. It generates fear. And that fear response is designed to instantly terminate that dangerous thought process. It's literally an evolutionary emergency brake for your brain.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source highlights this massive aha moment regarding the dream state. During a dream, your brain somehow knows that you are not an actual actor in the real world. You're entirely disconnected from physical reality.
Exactly. Because the brain knows it's dreaming and isolated from physical consequences, the amygdala essentially takes the night off.
It just clocks out.
Pretty much. It doesn't pull the emergency brake. This creates a fascinating exception to your waking rules. It allows you to freely experience thoughts and scenarios that would normally trigger a massive waking fear response.
Right, right.
You can dream about culturally, sexually, or professionally forbidden things, and the thought chain is allowed to play out completely without that immediate fear shutting it down. The logical rules are suspended because the threat isn't real.
Wait, hold on a second, though. Let me play devil's advocate here, because I'm sure you, the listener, are thinking the exact same thing.
Go for it.
If the fear brake is completely turned off during a dream, why do I still have terrifying nightmares where I wake up in a cold sweat? Doesn't that mean the amygdala is still firing away?
That is a great point to clarify. The model Lob outlines isn't saying the amygdala is literally dead or entirely offline. Rather, its standard function of terminating forbidden or socially unacceptable thought loops is suspended.
Ah, I see.
In waking life, if you start thinking about doing something highly inappropriate at work, your amygdala spikes anxiety to stop you. In a dream, you just go ahead and do it, and the dream continues its bizarre narrative. The emergency brake on social and logical rules is off.
Got it.
But if your dream narrative stumbles into a simulation of primal moral danger, like falling off a cliff or being chased, that can still trigger a profound physiological fear response that overrides the sleep state entirely and wakes you up.
Wow.
The key takeaway from Kurzweil is that the logical constraints we rely on while awake are relaxed, which is why the patterns combine in such incredibly weird ways.
Okay, that makes it much clearer. It's so wild to think of dreams just as a mechanical, biological process where the logical brake is temporarily disabled, letting the pattern processors just run completely wild.
It really reframes the whole experience.
It does. So we've got this incredible biological blueprint now: pattern processors, novelty filters, fear brakes. This transitions us right into part 2 of Kurzweil's framework.
Right.
The book argues that we can take this biological model, which operates on fairly simple rules, and use it to build human-like AI. And the timeline he predicted for this milestone. He argued we could see this by around 2029.
And while the reviewer lab suggests we might need to add a few years to Kurzweil's figures, because those biological models are indeed quite simple compared to the messy reality of neuroscience.
Sure, biology is messy.
Right, but Lob firmly notes that this doesn't invalidate the main argument at all. The core premise remains entirely intact. Real artificial intelligences might eventually be built according to the exact same principles that make biological intelligences work. The timeline might shift, but the trajectory is set.
Let's break down the staggering numbers here, because this is where the sheer scale of the math gets wild for you as the listener. Try to really picture this. According to Kurzweil's figures, a typical human brain contains about 300 million pattern processing units.
300 million.
Right, 300 million. That sounds like an astronomical number to us. But Kurzweil points out that the artificial intelligences of the future might have billions of these units.
Billions.
Think about what that means in practical terms. Imagine a human brain trying to comprehend a single, dense novel, while another artificial brain has the capacity to comprehend the entirety of the internet in that exact same fraction of a second. The sheer scale of machine intelligence would mathematically and vastly far exceed the capabilities of the biological human mind.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's crucial to understand that these existential fears about machine capability aren't entirely new.
No.
Not at all. The review brings up the brilliant computer pioneer John von Neumann. All the way back in 1956, von Neumann prepared a series of lectures that were published posthumously as The Computer and the Brain.
1956.
That's early.
Very early.
Oh.
What's so striking, almost haunting about this, is that this was his last work, written while he was confined to a hospital bed.
Wow. So he's literally dying, and this is what he's thinking about. Precisely. Even back then, looking at the massive, primitive, room-sized computers of the 1950s machines that used vacuum tubes and punch cards, he clearly saw the parallels between biological brains and computing machines.
That's incredible foresight.
It really is. And according to Loeb's review, which references the mathematician Stan Ulam, even in the early 1950s, von Neumann was reportedly already deeply worried about where this entire trajectory would eventually lead humanity. He saw the mathematical writing on the wall decades before anyone else.
What blows my mind is that he saw those giant, clunky, rudimentary machines and immediately leaped to, uh-oh, this is going to outpace us.
Yeah.
And that profound worry brings us right to the existential dread of this deep dive, moving into part 3 of the book. If our brains are ultimately just predictable, biological pattern processing machines executing algorithms like a wet computer, do we actually have free will?
The big question.
Or are we just passengers watching the machinery run, tricking ourselves into thinking we're driving?
This raises an important question, and it's one that forces Kurzweil himself to take what the review calls a leap of faith.
A leap of faith.
Yes. Kurzweil chooses to explicitly believe that humans do have free will, even while he freely admits in the text that it's extremely difficult for him to find actual proof of his own so-called free will inside a deterministic model.
I mean, it's hard to prove you're making a choice when the math says your neurons are always going to fire that way.
Right. But to explain how free will might exist in a mechanical universe, Kurzweil points to the fascinating concepts of Stephen Wolfram, specifically his work on cellular automatons.
Okay, lay this out for us.
Now, to grasp this, I want you to imagine for a moment that the entire universe is just one giant cellular automaton. Think of a massive grid of squares, like a chessboard that goes on forever.
Okay, an infinite chessboard.
Each square turns black or white based on a very strict, incredibly simple mathematical rule regarding the squares next to it. As time moves forward, row by row, the grid updates.
Okay, I'm picturing it. A giant grid, flipping black and white based on strict rules.
Now, Wolfram postulates that there are certain classes of these cellular automatons that you simply cannot predict.
Why not? If they follow rules.
Even though they are running endlessly on strict deterministic rules, the patterns they create become so wildly complex that the only way to know what row 1 billion looks like is to actually run the simulation and calculate every single step along the way. There's no shortcut. You can't just plug it into a formula and skip ahead.
So what does this all mean for us and our supposed free will? I need to explain it like I'm 5 for this paradox.
Here's the massive catch that Wolfram and Kurzweil rely on. All computers are merely a physical subset of the universe.
Right.
They exist inside the universe. Therefore, no computer could ever possibly be big enough to run a simulation of the entire universe, because the computer would physically have to be larger than the universe itself just to hold all the data.
Oh, I see. So because we are inside the system, we can never build a machine powerful enough to simulate the whole system faster than the system is already running itself.
Exactly. It's a brilliant workaround to the dread of determinism. It means your decisions might be entirely deterministic, governed entirely by the physical laws of pattern processing in your 300 million cortical units, but your future state remains completely unknowable and utterly unpredictable.
Unknowable determinism.
Yes, the outcome of your choices is computationally hidden from everyone, including the universe itself, until it actually happens.
That is strangely comforting. The machinery might be rigged, but nobody has the script. That unpredictable future leads us perfectly to the final, truly mind-bending concept we need to tackle today from the last part of Kurzweil's book, The Cyborg Dilemma.
This is where it gets really strange.
Yeah. Now, for you listening, think of the old ship of Theseus paradox. If you have an ancient wooden ship in a harbor, and over 10 years you replace every single rotting wooden plank with a new plank, is it still the same ship at the end of the decade? There's none of the original wood left.
And the text points out that our biological bodies naturally undergo this exact same gradual replacement throughout our lives anyway.
Yeah.
Most of the cells of your body right now are continuously being replaced. You are literally a biological ship of Theseus.
Exactly. So, looking to the future, what happens if you apply that to the meat in your head? What happens if you start gradually replacing parts of your biological brain with non-biological pattern processing units? Say you swap out a few thousand failing neurons for silicon processors, then 1,000,000, then 1,000,000,000. At what point are you no longer you? Are you still you when your brain is 99% artificial?
It's the ultimate philosophical trap of transhumanism.
Well, Kurzweil has a remarkably cheeky resolution to this dilemma. The review quotes him directly on this, and I laughed when I read it. He says, quote, "It is still you. There might even be more copies of you. If you think you are a good thing, then 2 of you is even better."
It's a very Silicon Valley response, isn't it?
So casual.
But to ground that rather humorous take philosophically, Kurzweil is making another major leap of faith here. He fundamentally believes that personal identity is not inherently tied to your biological hardware.
Okay.
The wet meat of your brain is just a medium. It's just the current hardware running the software. Instead, he argues that identity is preserved entirely through the continuity of the pattern of information that makes us, us.
Continuity is the magic word there.
Yes, continuity allows for continual, ongoing change. You might be somewhat different physically and mentally today than you were yesterday or 10 years ago, but your identity remains exactly the same because the flow of that informational pattern was continuous. It never broke. It just shifted mediums.
But I've got to say, I'm not totally sold. And the reviewer Lob raises a slightly terrifying contrast to this biological reality that really makes you pause.
He does. He notes a massive fundamental difference between biology and machinery. Biological systems naturally cannot be perfectly copied, backed up, and recreated. You can't put a human on a flash drive.
Yeah.
But non-biological systems absolutely can be. I want you to imagine for a moment the million-copy problem.
Sounds ominous.
Imagine if, after becoming fully synthetic, there were suddenly 1,000,000 perfectly backed up copies of you stored on servers around the world. And imagine if that non-biological version of you has improved 1,000,000 times over and thinks 1,000,000 times faster than you did before those future cyborg procedures.
Wow.
The reviewer asks a haunting question. If you're completely honest with yourself, can you really say that the resulting entity or entities is just the same as you?
Yeah, that's where the continuity argument kind of breaks my brain. If there's 1,000,000 of me running around experiencing 1,000,000 different lives simultaneously, the concept of me loses all meaning. It's such an overwhelming thing to process.
It is.
But as the review wraps up, it notes that Kurzweil remains completely undeterred by these philosophical speed bumps. He is incredibly confident that it will eventually be possible to fully reverse engineer the human brain. He firmly believes the literal construction manual for a human being is actually operating on a scale that we have the capacity to understand.
It's accessible to us.
Right. The true mountain of information inside our heads isn't some magical, untouchable essence bestowed by the cosmos. It's simply the accumulated patterns of what we have learned and experienced throughout our lives. And it's a mountain he'll be very happy to see grow infinitely taller inside non-biological intelligences.
And that perspective synthesizes perfectly into the ultimate grand dream shared by Kurzweil and the philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, which the text explicitly highlights at the very end.
Tell us about that dream.
They share this profound, almost spiritual vision that the universe is naturally, inevitably evolving towards what they call an omega point.
An omega point, what does that actually look like?
This omega point is described as a final cosmic destination possessing a maximum level of complexity and consciousness. It's the idea that the universe is waking up, and we are just the early stages of that awakening.
We're just the beginning.
Exactly. This grand evolutionary trajectory is precisely why Kurzweil remains such a profound optimist. He doesn't see AI as a threat. He believes that progress towards the human-machine singularity is not only needed, but ultimately beneficial, perhaps even mandated, for the universe as a whole to reach its ultimate state of awareness.
It's an incredibly beautiful, if slightly intimidating way to look at the future. I want to sincerely thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. It's been an incredible journey looking under the hood of human consciousness, exploring the mechanics of our own minds, and staring into the wild, unpredictable possibilities of our AI future.
But before we officially part ways today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought.
Oh, lay it on us.
It's something that builds directly on the concepts of pattern recognition and identity we've been unpacking, but applied to the digital footprint you're creating right now.
Okay.
Think about this. If your identity is just a continuous flow of information patterns, what happens when an advanced AI is eventually trained on every single text message, voice note, email, and social media post you've ever sent?
That's a lot of data.
When your biological body eventually dies, but your digital pattern continues to seamlessly chat, joke, and share memories with your great-grandchildren through an interface, did you actually die? Or did your continuous pattern just temporarily pause, get stoned on a hard drive for a century, and boot up an exact replica who merely thinks they are you?
Wow. I want you to seriously ponder that the next time you hit send on a text, the next time you struggle to learn a new pattern, or the next time you wake up in a cold sweat from a bizarre, rule-breaking dream. We'll catch you next time.